Good morning, everyone. Today's a fast day, a half fast. I have to say it real slowly. Half fast.
Oh, well, what is the?
Today is Shiva Sabra Tammuz, the 17th day of Tammuz. There are a number of fasts in the Jewish year. Almost all of them are associated with the destruction of the Jewish nation on its land. And the culmination of those fasts are Tisha B'Av, which is exactly 3 weeks from this morning. Tisha B'Av is the saddest day in the Jewish calendar. Every single major tragedy that ever happened to the Jewish people either occurred on Tisha B'Av or had its roots on Tisha B'Av. I think I went over the litany of this before. Have I? Have I
Yeah.
not? It started with the Jewish people when it was declared that they wandered for 40 years in the desert because they accepted the report of the 10 spies, of 10 of the 12 spies who gave an evil report. And the Midrash teaches us that God said at that point, you cried today for nothing, but in the future, on this day, I'll give you something to cry about. The destruction of both temples in the year 586 and then the year 70 occurred on Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av. Beitar, the last Jewish stronghold in its search for independence against the Romans, I think was destroyed about the year 135 or so on Tisha B'Av. The Romans a year later established a pagan city after razing Jerusalem on the site of Jerusalem and had the dedication for it on Tisha B'Av. I think they called it Alina Kapatalina. And then, if you want to, I'll just give you a brief litany through the ages. The declaration of expulsion of the Jews from Spain with the Inquisition was signed on Tisha B'Av in the year 1492. In 1648, the massacres of Tachvatat, beginning of 1648, 1649, the Khmelnytsky massacres, where about 600,000 Jews were slaughtered, began on Tisha B'Av. Bringing up to more modern times, World War I began with a fatal assassination.
Prince Ferdinand.
By a, I think it was by a, what's his name? I think it was a Jew, Greenberg or something like that, a diplomat in Paris. I don't remember. This occurred on Tisha B'Av. World War I, of course, the World War II had its seeds in Tisha B'Av. The Holocaust, also. I mean, it's all part of this. The expulsion of the Jews to the Warsaw Ghetto, the establishment of the Warsaw Ghetto, the expulsion of Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto to the concentration camps occurred on Tisha B'Av. There's so many things that happen on this day. They're just absolutely amazing. The only Israeli jetliner to be shot down, or what happened over Bulgaria on Tisha B'Av. I think it was 1956 or something like that. Today begins, the Shiva Sabra Tammuz is the beginning of the destruction of the temple, which was, or the temple walls, which the temple was finally destroyed on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, 3 weeks later. The breach of the walls in Jerusalem, I think, occurred on the 10th of Tevet, which occurs normally about January, because there was lots of fighting on. It took a long time. All these are fast days, half fast days, from the appearance of light, not really sunrise, it begins earlier, until the appearance of the stars, not really sundown, which is usually 35 minutes after sundown, in Atlanta at least. The further you get to the equator, the closer that time becomes between sundown and the appearance of the stars. And the further away you get from the equator, the longer that time comes. So at the equator, the sundown and the stars coming out occur simultaneously. Being a Jew, you get to learn a lot about your world, the physical world. You really do. This is a fast day because we mourn not just the destruction of the temples, we mourn all the destructions of in Judaism that occurred, that had seeds in this time period. And so Jews typically don't get haircuts during this period, so you'll see if you go to Borough Park, for instance, in Brooklyn, you'll see all the barbershops very busy this past week. Everybody getting their haircuts. On Friday, I was calling several of my colleagues, and they were all out. Where were they? They're getting haircuts. I got my haircut 3 o'clock on Friday. Doesn't look it, but it's all right.
Take on the water though either. Would you drown?
No. So for those 3 weeks, it's like a mourning period. You're not supposed to cut your hair. You're not supposed to go out to a show or to hear to a nightclub and things like that. Now, the mourning period intensifies with the 9 days before Tisha B'av, beginning the first day of the month of Av. Today is the 17th day of Tammuz. So you count up to the end of the month, and 3 weeks from today, actually on Sunday is Tisha B'av, the 9th of Av. So then, beginning the 1st of Av is Rosh Chodesh, begins this more intensive mourning period. And there are various practices among Jews about what you can do, what you can't do. Some Jews don't shave at all during those 9 days. Some Jews don't shave during the 3 weeks. Some Jews don't bathe during the 9 days. But they bathe for prepare for Shabbat. Now, what do you mean by bathing? You mean actually taking a shower? Is that considered bathing? Well, I would say most modern Orthodox Jews would say taking a shower is not what they mean by bathing. They mean, going swimming in the ocean or the swimming pool and having fun.
Say I drowned.
That's during the 9
Went
days. I mean, you can go to save somebody who's drowning.
No, but they wouldn't let me in. They
Okay.
said I drowned.
It's interesting. If a Jewish mourning usually starts with great intensity and gradually gets lighter. After somebody dies, you're in mourning, if it's a close relative, and you have this great intensive mourning period, 3 days of crying, and the 7 days of saying Shiva, and the 30 days and it gets lighter. After the 7 days of Shiva, you're allowed out of your house, and you're allowed to go back to work, and you're allowed back into the world. And those 30 days, the real heavy mourning, and then after the 30 days, if it's a parent, you mourn for a year. Restrictions are less and less. So the period gets lighter and lighter as you're going along. But for national mourning periods, it's just the opposite. It begins lightly and it becomes more intensive. Because for a person, for a relative who dies, you feel that very strongly, immediately. You don't need any warm-up period for that. You feel very intensely. And what is necessary is to get you back into the world, how to learn how to face the world now that you have this hole in your heart that's missing, that's empty because this person that you love is gone. So it tries to ease you back into the world. But here, what we're trying to do, it's very hard to feel the intensity of national mourning for something that may have happened thousands of years ago, even though the tragedies continue even till this day on Tisha B'av. So, as a matter of fact, most Orthodox people won't travel on Tisha B'av, or sign any contracts of importance or things like that. They just stay away from important things on that day that may have dire consequences. But we need time to really build up to it, to feel the intensity of it. And so while every other fast day up to that is like today and the 10th of Tevet beforehand is a half fast, Tisha B'av is a full fast from sundown to sundown. And the only other full fast on the Jewish calendar is Yom Kippur. I think Tisha B'Av is a harder fast because it's late in the day, especially in Atlanta. I mean, even today, the stars don't come out till like 9:28. That's pretty late. And actually 3 weeks from now, will probably be a little earlier, at least. All right. So that's why we were longer in services today, because we had to add special Torah reading for the fast day. What are we up to in the book?
We were doing about the synagogue.
Yeah.
I think we pretty much finished that, but I don't know what we started with.
Right. Through 195.
When you want to get the
Synagogue. We went through synagogue personnel. Rabbi Cantor, Gabbai. Gabbai is not necessarily present at the synagogue. Gabbai means the one who stands over the Torah when someone's reading, to help correct them, etc., etc. It's an honored position, can be given to the president of the synagogue. Shamash or the sexton, we don't have one. It's hard to. Some of these positions we don't have a cantor, we don't have a full-time Torah reader, we don't have a shamash. Well, as a large synagogue, we should have all of these, but we pride ourselves as being a participatory synagogue and having our own members take these tasks upon themselves. I left you with the story of the guy who wanted to be a Kohen last week, right?
Yeah.
That's a great story. Okay. Major festivals. I'm not going to go through the major festivals with you, simply because we do them in class as the festival arrives. So we did a whole unit on Passover during Passover, before Passover. We did Shavuot before Shavuot, and we'll do Sukkot before Sukkot. And I think that's more meaningful, because if I tell you about Sukkot today, and you don't look at an etrog or a lulav or build a sukkah until September, it may not. What I say today might not have any meaning to you. Just know that there's a process here. The most important, I would say, the most important contribution that Judaism has made to the world, is probably the concept of the sacredness of time. Sacredness of time. In the world of God, in the world of the souls, time doesn't exist. God is above time. God is not subject to time. I tried to describe it in my classes by using the following analogy. I got this from Rabbi Ben Blech. It says if you take a film, let's say you take the film Gone with the Wind, and you hold up the film, and you can look at 3 different squares of film, and you can see the action from one to the other in an instant, simultaneously. Suppose you were real good and had good eyes, and you could open up a dozen, or you could see a couple of minutes, maybe, of time in an instant, all at once. Suppose you had fantastic eyes and hands and stuff, and you could see the whole reel all at once, right? You could see what happens over time in an instant, all at once. That's how I can explain to you, the only way I can explain to you, how God can see everything all at once. And in the world of the souls, that in fact is the way it is. That's how I would think that when you dream, you can have prophetic dreams, because your soul is very active when it dreams, and may have very strong contact with the world of the souls. And then, in that case, time is irrelevant. So you can see what happens before and see what happens later,
Why don't they let us remember what
and,
we
and,
dream?
and will happen in the future. What?
Why don't they let us remember what we dream?
They?
The souls.
Souls don't forget. We forget.
Well, they don't tell me.
If you wake up and you forget a dream,
Oh, if I wake up, I woke up.
if you wake
I don't
up and
know if I
if you wake
dreamt.
up and forget a dream, and you don't remember what you dreamt, but you're probably better off. But if you wake up very agitated about your dream, and you can't forget it, and it won't leave you, you know there's something very significant there, good or bad. Just know the dreams are in symbolic language, which is more or less close akin to the language of the souls. Just like fables are in symbolic language. We wonder about, we teach our kids these stories, these fables. Some of them very gruesome and violent, and a fox eating Red Riding Hood's grandmother, a wolf, whatever. I mean, but kids don't have a problem with it. I mean, they understand the symbolic language in it somehow, on a certain level. Anyway, so when you dream in symbolic language, and dreams are never quite what they seem to be. You have to remember, it's a symbol. For instance, as I've gone through this in a few classes, but I'll just mention it to you because it's very interesting. If you dream about a sexual encounter, very often the message of the dream is not sexual. The Talmud says if you dreamed about having sex with your mother, it probably means you'll be a Talmud Chacham, a wise and scholarly person. What is that? What is that? Where's that come from? Because it's symbolic, it's a symbol of something else. See? Whereas if a dream about watering an olive tree with olive oil is a dream about incest. You see?
You're feeding it.
So understand that while your dreams may be frightening because the symbols they use are the symbols that you know. People you're familiar with, activities and places that you're familiar with. And they may use, the language of the dream uses all these things, and it may seem very upsetting. But actually the meaning of the dream may not be something that's very upsetting at all. You took it the wrong way. So it's very important that if you have a dream that's very upsetting, that you try to get someone who you trust to interpret it, or you might pray to God to release you from any bad consequences that might be in this dream. And we have a law in Judaism called Tanis Cholim, a fast, a dream fast. If you have a dream that's particularly frightening to you, and even though the dream may not be frightening, you are frightened by it. You don't know why. You're upset. You can declare that day a fast and not eat that whole day. As a fast to ask God to diminish the consequences of the dream if they be for evil or bad. And question is, can you fast on Shabbos? You're not allowed to fast on Shabbos. But if you have a dream Friday night, can you fast on Shabbos? The law says yes, you can fast on Shabbos. Why? Because not fasting on Shabbos, you may be more upset and not enjoy the Shabbos as fasting. Question is, what happens if you have a dream the night before Yom Kippur? Then you fast 2 days. Can you fast 2 days? We never allow a situation in a normal fasting situation to allow fast 2 days. Some people say even then you can do that. So rabbis took the business about dreams and fasting very, very seriously. But my point is that in the world of souls there is no such thing as time. And And we are put here on this earth in a realm of time, and we are given a certain amount of time to use. What is the psalmist puts it this way, Yemei vahem shivim shana, that the years we are granted are 70 years. V'im b'gevuros shmonim, if one is a gibor or strong, worthy, he could achieve 80. You know, do you want to live forever? Do you want to live for 150 years like some scientists say we should be able to do?
For
You know,
what I'm able to do.
You reach about 50 and you stay at the in a certain health frame and body frame for 100 years, from age 50 to 150, and then suddenly you die. Would you like to do that?
Why not? What am I going to do when I die?
Another seven?
Question is,
That's what I
question
wanna
is,
know.
what are you doing here? What are you doing here? The days here are an opportunity given to you and your soul to grow. And Jewish calendar fills those days with opportunities for growth. Now, for instance, you're always in a certain mindset in the Jewish calendar, no matter what time of year it is. For instance, every week you look forward to Shabbos. You know, hang in there, Shabbos is coming, as the old bumper sticker I talk about says. And if you ever really observe Shabbos for a few weeks in a row, and you'll come to treasure it like that. And then every holiday, we have the three major festivals: Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot, and before that Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. Just before that, it puts you in a frame of mind. Now, for instance, these fast days are coming, beginning today. And I would say this fast day that begins today is part of a process that I would call Operation Self-Improvement, that begins today and culminates with Yom Kippur, and maybe even with and then it culminates with Yom Kippur, and then sort of diminishes somewhat through Sukkot. It just hangs on. What is it? Well, we have these 3 weeks of mourning, and what do we do when we mourn? We should be overlooking the history of what happened before and terrible tragedies that have occurred to the Jewish people, and what do all these tragedies have in common? We had something to do with all of them. That our actions have consequences. The temple was not destroyed for nothing. Sages say the first temple was destroyed because of idolatry and people were not listening to God. The second temple was destroyed because of needless hatred between Jews.
And how
We
can
have a
we
lot
go-
of that today. Yes.
How can we go to Israel in this 3-week period?
Well, it's a wonderful time to go to Israel. To feel closer to God and to the land, and you'll be in Jerusalem. You'll be at the wall during this period where the temple stood. You'll be able to really feel it. So, understanding these 3 weeks that our actions have consequences. Then there's a little flow to the calendar, because right after the great morning of Tisha B'Av, there's a period of joy. The Shabbos after Tisha B'Av is called Shabbos Nachamu, the Sabbath of comfort. And we should feel comforted that although we mourned for these terrible destructions, that there won't be any more destructions if we've been part of this process, and that God will never abandon us. And there's a little holiday thrown in there called Tu B'Av, the 15th day of Av, which in biblical times was a Jewish Sadie Hawkins day. Yeah, and they used to make matches, and the boys and girls would go into the fields, and it was just wonderful time, wonderful, joyous time. And some say they do this again on Yom Kippur. Interesting. In the afternoon. But anyway, and then the month of Elul comes, which is the month before Rosh Hashanah, and that whole month we blow the shofar every morning. We read a psalm about God is our light and our salvation, and we begin the process of introspection, of reevaluating our lives and ourselves that culminates in the forgiveness of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And now we feel cleansed after Yom Kippur of all our sins, and then we should feel that way. And we what's the first thing you're supposed to do when you come home from shul on Yom Kippur night? After Yom Kippur, you're supposed to put the first nail into the sukkah, start building the sukkah. Now that you feel cleansed, you do a mitzvah. That's coming up. And Sukkot is called Zman Simchatenu, the time of our great joy, time of our joy. It's the harvest, yes, that's right. That's the joyous harvest that we take for the fall and the winter. And it's the joy also because we feel cleansed from this whole process that begins today, and we're able to really celebrate God with great joy. And at the end of Sukkot, we have another 2 days. We don't live in the Sukkah. We have Shmini Atzeret and Simchas Torah. So what's the purpose of these days? We don't have the Esrog and Lulav. And the Talmud brings, the Midrash brings a very interesting thought. It's like God saying, you know, I feel so close to you now. After all that we've been through in the past couple of months, especially on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and I feel so close to you, and the celebration of the holidays. I don't want to let you go. Stay a couple of more days with me. That's that image. So this is a whole process. Begins today, and will culminate with the Yom Kippur, and won't complete it until Sukkot, which is like today's the 26th of June, right? And Sukkot is this year early, but it ends.
What days do I have to stay out of work? That's what I want to know.
Sukkot, I think the last 2 days of Sukkot, 27th, 28th of September. So you have July, August, 3 months. Well, calendar works.
27, 28.
And then after Sukkot, you begin to look forward to Hanukkah, and the process starts again with other themes. But each theme, each year, has a way of touching you in a certain unique way and developing you and your personality and providing opportunities for growth. Okay.
When I was reading some books, I don't know how long ago now, the soul left the body when the person died. The soul then went to someone else to learn more. Where does that all fit in?
I will tell you that the belief in reincarnation is one of the only beliefs that is not universally accepted among all scholars. However, it is greatly accepted by so many. I would say the vast majority. So I would say reincarnation is a fundamental belief in the Jewish system of beliefs. And as a matter of fact, the Talmud talks about some famous reincarnations of souls. Adam, the first man, is Aleph, Daled, Mem. Aleph is for Adam, Daled is a D for David, King David, and the Mem, the M, is for Mashiach, Messiah. So the same soul will be Adam, David, and Messiah in the future. Mordechai, the Purim story, when the Jewish people were threatened to be killed by Haman because Mordechai wouldn't bow down to Haman. So the sages say that Mordechai's soul was a reincarnation from Jacob, Father Jacob. Why? Father Jacob refused to. Father Jacob bowed down to his brother Esau when he was coming. Jacob was returning to the land to assume his place as leader of the people. His brother was coming. He thought to kill him with 400-foot soldiers, and he bowed down many times, 7 times or so, before him. So to correct this flaw in his character, he was able to come back again, and as Mordechai. So there are many, even Talmud talks about, there are many times we have famous instances of reincarnation. So maybe when somebody dies, and maybe they won't go through the entire process of purification in heaven until they get there. Maybe they need to come back. I mean, they come back more than once. Why are people born in some? Why do children die? Why does a child die? 2-year-old child with disease. How could you answer that? Other than the fact that there was some correction in that soul necessitated by that experience, and that soul was given that experience for that brief period of time.
So his soul went to another child to help it.
No. When somebody may have died, lived 80, 90 years, but they were missing something in their experience that they needed for their growth, and so they were given the opportunity to come back, even for a brief time. This is how the mystics will explain the death of children. How do you explain the fact that we have children that are born, and at 2 years old, they know so much poetry, and they're able to read, or they're able to play the piano, or great symphonies and things like these children who wonder children of these. How do you explain this kind of talent? Didn't come from some. It didn't come in a vacuum. It had to come from somewhere. Maybe they had learned it in a previous life and took it with them. Though the soul is supposed to forget everything it had learned before, maybe there's certain things that do stay with you. So that this is appropriate, because we can turn to page 271. We can talk about birth. What happens at birth?
Take a deep breath and push. Well,
Okay. We say in our prayers, "Elokai neshama shenatata bi tahorehi," O Lord, the soul that you gave me is pure. We don't believe in original sin, that mankind is basically evil, which is a fundamental Christian belief. We believe that mankind is basically pure, good. It's a source of amazement to me how Christians can uphold that belief. I don't know if I mentioned it here, but I'll never forget this experience. I was once on a trip to Los Angeles visiting my in-laws, and the seats were three and three, and so my wife sat with Josh and Leah. We didn't have Jonathan at the time, and I sat in back of them. Next to me was this fundamentalist Christian who lived in north of Los Angeles, and one of my kids Leah was a baby at the time. We were talking about kids and stuff. He comes up and talks about kids are basically evil. I said, what? Say what?
not
They
my
really
kid.
believed it. I mean, take a look. You see, you put kids together, they pull and they tug, they take from each other, and they're selfish. Kids are basically evil. It was very hard for me to understand how this guy could really believe that. But he did, really, with a full heart. I tried to explain to him that kids are basically good, and they're pure. And any evil that they have is learned. We build into that. But that's a very fundamental belief. When a child is born, they're born pure. How do we name our children? We name our children after someone who is deceased, basically. To give someone honor. The Sephardic community, however, will name after either a deceased or someone living. So it's possible to have in the Sephardic community, a Mark Kunis Jr. or the third, something like that, which is very uncommon among Jews.
Who do we go to now?
Ovi, or B'Shalom. And they will name you after the living or the dead. But that's very significant. Names are significant. You have to be very careful who you name after, what you name after. I would just caution everybody one thing I don't like is you give your kid an English name that's really a Jewish name or a biblical name, and give the person a different Jewish name. I had a kid in one of my Hebrew school classes. His name was David. Right? His Hebrew name was Asher. The mother liked the name David, but she wanted to name him after the great grandfather or something. So it didn't make any sense to me. My biggest problem when people come to me with names, these Yiddish names are just very strange and very hard to spell, and people don't really say them correctly. So it's hard to get straight, and we want to give our kids Hebrew names generally today. And so, but there are some wonderful names now. I mean, we've organized it, and I have a name dictionary. If anybody's contemplating having children, just let me know. Look through it. So when you name your child after a deceased relative, you want to name. The hope is that child will emulate all the good qualities of that relative. When is a child named? A boy is named at a bris. Where is the bris usually held?
8 days.
Where is it usually held?
At the home.
At the home. Can be held in shul. Where's a girl named? In shul. It's become very, very popular today to have a girl naming ceremony at home. People want this. They feel the girls are being cheated. It's not equal. That they're not allowed to have this baby naming ceremony at home. And I tried to explain to these people, I said, you got it all wrong. A girl has an opportunity to be named in the presence of the Torah. A boy doesn't.
Why is that?
Because he's named at the bris when he born into the covenant. So the privilege, the greater privilege, is given to the girl. So, today people really are really mixed up about whether our roles should be. So if they really insist on having a girl's naming at home, what I do is I insist that they come to shul and do the naming here, and then we'll do it again at home for their friends and relatives. They want to have a party for their daughter. It's nice to have a party. It's nice.
Oh, we can have a
And let's talk about a bris. Bris is what's commonly called, the modern Hebrew will call it brit. Brit means covenant. Brit milah. Covenant of the circumcision. Milah is circumcision. Who should perform a brit? A mohel. A moil.
Well, somebody can pronounce it.
Yeah, in Hebrew, in Yiddish it's moil, and in Hebrew it's mohel. Shouldn't you want to have a doctor performing the bris? Well, a mohel could be a doctor. In fact, we do have in this town a couple of mohilim who are doctors. Well, I will tell you though, if you, for instance, the average pediatrician may do 50, if he's good, 100 a year. Well, a good mohel may do 500 a year, 1,000 a year, especially in the bigger cities. Now, if you were having surgery, would you want the surgeon who performs your procedure to be a surgeon who does it every once in a while, or does it every day, and seen every possible circumstance or contingency?
And then you can go and get 3 stitches when you cut your finger.
So you want a mohel who's experienced, and a mohel typically has more experience than a doctor. As a matter of fact, the mohilim have written the books about circumcision that are being used in medical school, have developed the instruments circumcision that are being used by doctors everywhere. There is a mohel in New York, a good friend of mine, who developed the most incredible instrument for circumcision that I've ever seen, making the most even, wonderful cut, just right, completely protected that you can't miss. And so when I came here, I asked that he teach one of the Mohinim in town here how to use it, but he wouldn't let it go, wouldn't let it out. Very protective. He's a mohel. He got it. His father developed it, and his son will take over when he's finished. And so people fly him. He flown to Singapore to do a bris. I mean, and to Hong Kong and all over the other side of the world. Okay, a mohel has to be a pious Jew who knows all the laws of Milah. The laws of Milah are not just how to do a circumcision that you learn in medical school. There are actual laws that are very important. I'll give you one for instance. You're not allowed to perform Milah on a child that's jaundiced. Now, a doctors do that all the time, but a mohel won't do it.
No, doctor won't until it's cleared. There's nothing wrong with the child.
Safra won't do it because he's a mohel,
Oh,
right? Because he's learned that that's not allowed. But I'm talking about pediatricians in hospitals. When kids are normally in hospital for 3 days, they'll do it. Just whether it's to get the extra money while they can, or for whatever reason. But there are many laws involved. And the mohel should be a person who knows how to learn Jewish law, and a person who's personally observant of the Sabbath, the holidays, and this I feel is a very, very important qualification. You person who's this mohel is going to bring this child into the covenant of Abraham. He has to be fully cognizant of the importance of what that means when he does it. It's unfortunate that there are many communities in the United States that do not have a mohel. And they're forced to train a doctor here, a Jewish doctor here and there to do it. But those doctors cannot possibly get the proper training that is necessary. There has been, throughout the centuries, anti-Semitic legislation to say that this is a very cruel procedure and we shouldn't allow circumcisions. As a matter of fact, in the past few days, I've come across a case where a woman is pregnant. The husband wants to have a bris, if it's a boy, and the wife absolutely refuses. They're both Jewish. She's been reading all kinds of literature, how circumcision is a cruel procedure.
it's a healthy.
It's a healthy procedure. Take a look at all risks of cancer and other diseases associated with that parts of the body, and what are the differences between people who are circumcised and uncircumcised, all kinds of things. There's a lot of propaganda about this, and we have to be vigilant and watch it. We do the bris on the 8th day. Why do we do the bris on the 8th day? Well, there are mystical reasons, and I'll probably get into that in many of my other classes. But suffice to say, we believe that a child is not proved to be a viable child. There's two cases. There are two tests of viability. If they live to 8 days, live to 30 days. So we don't perform the bris until the child is proved that they can be a viable child till the 8th day. And what about the 8th day of Shabbos? You're not supposed to cut on Shabbos. Well, since the bris is a mitzvah of the Torah, you cut on Shabbos anyway. What about if the 8th day is Yom Kippur? Yes, you can have a bris on Yom Kippur, which is really nice for the parents because they don't have to spend money on making a big party for everybody. Actually, most people who have a bris on Yom Kippur do at night the party, a breaking of the fast. So they do it that way.
And having the bris in shul, is it at holidays or just as desired?
No, you can have the bris and shul at any time. Among many Orthodox circles, they will have most of the time a bris in the shul after services in the morning. But a bris can be done any time during the day, and it's become very popular in Atlanta to have a bris, especially in the summertime, dinner. For dinner. You invite all your friends for the bris at 5:30, 6 o'clock. It's still light out until the sun doesn't go down till 8:45 or something like that, 9 o'clock. So you have the bris then. But a bris is preferable in the morning. To do it as soon as you can. So, if at all the bris may be deemed harmful to the child, we wait. Child has any sort of illness that might cause problems. You have all kinds of people that we stage a bris. All kinds of characters. They're the people who bring in the baby. The kvarta and kvarterin, what you call the godparents. It's not really a proper translation, but if you want to give someone that honor. People to bring in the child. Then there's the sandik. There's the one who holds the child during the bris. You wouldn't believe how strong a little 8-day-old baby's legs can be. You just can't believe it until you stand there and hold. Now you hear a lot of screaming at the bris of the baby sometimes. Almost all of the screaming is because the baby doesn't want to be held down. And during the prep time, is when the baby screams. Actually, so most of the crying you hear at a bris is the baby doesn't like to be restrained and held down, and the baby is prepped with whatever the doctor uses to clean the area, whatever, and then very often we wind up with some sweet pea that was unanticipated, or some other gifts that come along. The proof of the pudding that this really isn't that painful to children. I saw an article recently that it may be more painful than we anticipated.
I saw that too.
I don't understand it because I do a lot of brises. As soon as the cutting is finished and the baby's wrapped up, what do? We hand the baby to another sandek to hold the baby during the baby naming. And the baby's usually very quiet and passive, like nothing. The baby was in excruciating pain. You would hear the baby cry. That's what babies do when they're in pain. They don't cry after the birth. That doesn't make any sense to me.
They know what's coming.
No. So we do the naming right after the bris. Now, what happens if a child was circumcised by a doctor in the hospital by mistake? Or he was circumcised on the 8th day by a doctor but really didn't have a bris? Or someone is converting and they had a circumcision already. So what do? Huh? You take a drop of blood from the area where the cutting is. It's really painless, and it's like it's probably even less painful than if you stick your finger with a needle and take a little drop of blood. It's probably less painful than that. and I've seen it done many, many, many times, even on 8 and 10-year-old children. No big deal. Because the important thing is to establish that this child is part of the covenant of Abraham, and this is done for a holy purpose. If a child is born with a cesarean section, and the 8th day happens to be the Sabbath or a holiday, you can wait till the next day. Since it didn't have this is not an exact counting of birth coming from the birth canal, so they will wait. Pinyan Aben. This is something that's not greatly understood by people today. The redemption of the firstborn. Remember the story going out of Egypt? Actually, in ancient times, the firstborn of each family was supposed to be the one dedicated to God. If the firstborn was a male, firstborn out of the womb was a male, he was dedicated to God. We have the custom following that the first fruits that come on a tree, a tree that's planted, the first issue of a lamb having a baby or a cow, that we dedicate that to the temple. The first always goes to God. The firstborn male, if it was a male, would be the religious functionaries of the Jewish people. In ancient times, as a matter of fact, not just in the Jewish culture, in all the ancient cultures, the firstborn males would be the ones in each family to develop the family shrine. It would be his responsibility when he would grow older to build a shrine. And everybody would come to pray at his place. And he would have all the family idols, or whatever cultural thing they had. The Jewish custom was very similar. But with the exodus of Egypt and the worshipping of the golden calf on Sinai, all the tribes participated except the Levites, and so the Levites were given the task of being the religious functionaries, and all the other families of Israel were disqualified. But their firstborn had to be redeemed from this obligation. And so you would come before a Kohen, which is the priestly family of the Levites, and you present your child. Again, the second viability stage is 30 days. After 30 days, usually it's done the 31st day, and you say to the Kohen, here's my child. It's supposed to be dedicated to God. And the Kohen would take the child and say, what do you want? Do you want your child, or do you want to give me 5 silver coins? Which is the amount indicated in the Torah. It's a nice way of the father saying that I love this child and I want this child. As a matter of fact, what we do today is, in many homes, we have a pinyan aben, you put the child on a silver tray, a pillow, silver tray, pillow, and people around there would put their jewelry on the silver tray to make it all the more valuable. Right? And the father then says, I want the son. The son's more valuable to me than all the gold and silver and jewels. And it's a beautiful ceremony, remembering the departure from Egypt, the experience of our people, saying that this is my child and I want him. But it has to be the firstborn male from the womb. First issue from the womb and a male. So if it's a Syrian section, it's not the first from the womb. If the next child is a male, after the Syrian section, that could be the firstborn, even though it's the second child. If first had a miscarriage, there's no pinyan aben because the first in the womb was the miscarriage. Okay. So we don't do a pinyan aben on Sabbath or a festival because of the money involved. today we need you have to have a Kohen to perform the ceremony, and you should make sure the Kohen is someone who is himself religiously observant. And the best thing to do when you have to do a Pidyon Ben for your child is to contact the rabbi and have him set it up with a Kohen. And I have to keep in my briefcase 5 silver coins. Just for this particular case. Okay, adoption and conversion on page 280.
Why did someone give me coins? Because I was going on a trip.
Because if you're going away on a trip, and someone gives you money to give to charity,
No, just gave me money.
that's why the custom comes from. Gives you money to give to charity when you get there. Then you have a task to perform, a mitzvah, and you have a reason why you should get there safely. Got to make sure you get there safely because you have to give charity.
Oh, okay.
So that's why the custom arose for people going on a big trip to give charity. Okay. It's a great mitzvah to adopt a child. Great mitzvah. I saw this cartoon that one of my colleagues faxed me. The 2 children playing in the schoolyard. I told her, "Where'd you come from?" "I came from my mother's belly." "Well, I came from my mother's belly." "Oh, but Johnny over there, he was adopted. He came from his mother's heart."
Yeah,
Great.
okay.
To raise a child is to be considered a parent in Judaism, really.
I was playing with the air.
Okay. When you adopt a child, usually today it's very hard to adopt a Jewish child. So almost all adoptions are a non-Jewish child, and there might be problems that you need to be cognizant of if you adopt a Jewish child. You need to know who those parents are and who the siblings are to make sure that your kid doesn't marry his sister. In this world, this Jewish world is very small. It's quite possible. Adoption is fraught with other pitfalls at times. Yeah, but you don't know who you're getting. With this kid's mother an alcoholic, or maybe he's inheriting that tendency to alcoholism or whatever. And so you try to be as careful as you can, but know that you're taking on the responsibility of a child, and whatever happens, good or bad, that's your responsibility. And it can be a wonderful experience. To make a child Jewish, you have to go through conversion. 3 requirements of conversion: circumcision, so you have a bris. The blessing of the bris is a little different. It's a blessing for welcoming a convert. And you take a child to the mikveh. The only thing you can't do is the acceptance of Jewish heritage and tradition and law, because it's a child. I mean, an infant can't do that. Even a 5-year-old can't do that, or even a 10-year-old is not qualified. So the court accepts it for them on their behalf. The Jewish court that's formed, because they're doing something in their favor. However, knowing that the child, when it reaches the age of maturity, 13 for a male or 12 for a female, has the power to say, "No, I never wanted this." And so the conversion will become invalid from its inception. I've never ever seen that happen, but it is possible.
You can't give the child back.
No, not that you would not have the
Yeah.
adoption, but the child said, "I don't want to be Jewish. I don't want to be treated. You did this to me. I didn't want to be. I wasn't born that way. And so you can't force that upon a child. Adoption has to be something that's done with the free will. With free will. Okay. Bar bat mitzvah. Any questions about adoption, conversion, bris, kinyan ben?
What did it mean when it says the adoption of a Jewish child is not saying the religious status of the child is Kohen?
That's right. If the child father was a Kohen, biological father, even though the adoptive father is not a Kohen, that child is still a Kohen. Just as like if the adoptive father is a Kohen, and the child is born to a father who's not a Kohen, or some father who's not Jewish, the child is not a Kohen, even though the adoptive father is a Kohen. That's really technical. It doesn't have any I would say, important applications for our time. Or few important applications for our time. Bar bat mitzvah, coming of age. There are a few mileposts in life that are very significant, that we look forward to. I really mark, we have the calendar that I spoke about, the sanctification of time being important for our growth and not wasting it. But we have times in our lives where we can really have an opportunity to look back and to shep nachas, as we say in Yiddish, to take some joy into what we've accomplished, and to mark those mileposts in our lives. Birth of a child is one of them. The bar bat mitzvah of a child is another one. The child comes of age, the Jewish rite of passage, so to speak. Well, there's no such thing as becoming bar mitzvah or becoming bat mitzvah. One becomes a bar mitzvah, a boy at age 13. A girl becomes a bat mitzvah at age 12 or 12 and a half in a day. There are two stages of a girl's adulthood in the Talmud. 12 and a half in a day. Certainly by 12 and a half in a day, a girl is considered an adult, a full adult. We mark this occasion by giving a boy, for instance, an honor he couldn't have before he was a bar mitzvah. Bar mitzvah means, bar is the Aramaic word for Hebrew is ben, which means the son of a mitzvah. He's the son of the commandments. Also means member. He's a member of the group who have to observe the commandments. Bat mitzvah is a daughter, also a member of those who have to observe the commandments. The responsibility now is their own to observe the commandments. So you give a child an honor they couldn't have before. In the case of a boy, you call him to the Torah. It used to be a perfunctory type of thing. A boy would have his birthday on a Sunday or a Monday. So Monday morning, they bring him to the synagogue for services and give him a aliyah, and that was it. No big deal. What's become in modern times a very big deal. You can make a bar mitzvah for $5, $10, $20, $30, $50,000. I mean, it's not unheard of.
On a bat mitzvah,
Yeah.
why doesn't the girl carry the Torah?
That's just what I was going to ask too.
The question is, why doesn't the girl read for the Torah? Why doesn't the girl have an aliyah at the Torah? Yeah, I think I went over this a couple of weeks ago. I'll just mention this again. That in the regular service, it's important to understand who has what obligations. Women are exempt from commandments that are bound by time. Since the Torah has to be read at certain times, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Monday morning, and Thursday morning. Women do not have to attend the Torah readings at that particular time. They may, they don't have to. They're not obligated to. So the people who were given the honors, the aliyahs at the Torah, those people who are supposed to be reading from the Torah at that particular time, are the people who have to be obligated. Because by their reading of the Torah at that particular time, they release everybody, all the other men who listen to the Torah reading,
Like Mike,
of their obligation.
like Mike yesterday with Shoshana.
Right. So, if a woman would get up and have an aliyah, she wouldn't be able to release the male from his obligation since she doesn't have the same obligation. She doesn't have to be there to listen to the reading of the Torah. However, if you had a service of all women, she would be able to have the honor and release all the women of their obligation. So there's development of women's prayer groups in modern times, in many synagogues, even in Orthodox synagogues, where women do read Torah. And in fact, we will have a service like that here in Hanukkah time, where we're going to have a Sunday morning bat mitzvah, where she will do the entire service. One of the Hoffman girls, I think Adrian Hoffman. Okay. As a matter of fact, can she carry the Torah? Probably she could. I have enough problems with the boys carrying the Torah. I have to walk with them and hold it up in the back. I know.
I just thought something seemed so missing yesterday. It was such a bright, you know.
I know that in some modern Orthodox synagogues, Torah is carried around the male section, given to a woman in the women's section. She carries around the women's section. Not too much of a problem. But the important thing about bar bat mitzvah is one becomes a bar bat mitzvah at a certain age. It's just a fact of age. How we mark the ceremonies is really a matter of custom and practice. I would say that's more important in our time that we be careful that when we structure and make a bar mitzvah, that there be less bar and more mitzvah. You know, less drinking and carrying on, and more knowing that what you're doing this for. You know, if you're going to just make a disco out of it and a chance to have your friends come and dance to loud music.
In 8 years, tell me that.
Okay. Well, we're just okay. We went through the chapter on marriage several sessions ago and divorce. I think what we have left to do is death and mourning, and I'm going to end here. And we'll complete that later. Yes?
Quick question, talking about the souls and reincarnation, how does the Torah or the rabbis or anybody look at animals in that respect? Or do they?
Can you be reincarnated into an animal?
Or no, what happens to animal, if you have an animal and they die, what happens to their soul?
Animals have a soul, but it's a less of a soul. It's not a neshama, they have a nefesh. The Torah says in prohibition of eating the blood, Adam hu nefesh. The blood is the nefesh. Nefesh is a lower form of a soul. We have a nefesh too, which is part of our neshama, our soul. But animals only have a nefesh. They don't have any higher part. Some will say that human beings, a soul from a human being can be reincarnated for punishment for whatever reason into an animal. I don't know what to make of that really. But we do believe the animal has a soul. That's why we don't drink the blood of an animal. Of course, we believe the repository of that part of the soul, the nefesh part, is the blood.
When do you grace our presence?
When will I be back?
Yeah.
First week in August, I believe. Class will resume
After all, I gotta make a call.
August 7th.
August 7th?
Yeah,
Oh, 9:45?
9:45. Because I have a wedding at 11.
Okay.
Oh, wow. One other question?
Yeah.
Because it's timely for me. I've got a person not a relative, but a very close friend of the family. Today is the stone setting. Is there anything, now it's not here, obviously I couldn't go
Stone
to it.
setting,
Yeah.
unveiling.
Unveiling, we called it stone setting back in Ohio, I guess, it doesn't matter.
Stone's already set.
Oh, okay, the unveiling,
It's a hard
okay.
thing to do.
Okay, is there anything you can do, you're supposed to do in terms of prayer or recognizing it if you're not a family member but you were very close? Or is it just kind of,
An unveiling is a time to go to the cemetery and consecrate that the monument is holy. If you're close to the person there, and make it a holy site as a place for prayer as well. And that's why we do that. I mean, if you're hundreds of miles away and they're having an unveiling,
yeah, you can't.
there's not much you can do about it unless you just want to make a memorial prayer. So, one last question, yeah.
Why can you not feel the person who's buried is there?
Was what? Is it there at the cemetery?
Yeah, to me, the people, person or persons, even my parents, are over my head. They are not in the ground.
Right.
What is the feeling?
Because it's just their remains, their physical remains are in the ground, but that's not what makes them unique and gives them character. What makes a person unique is their soul. The soul elevates.
I thought sometimes the soul changes, though. It changes into different things in different people.
Well, I don't know what you mean by that.
Like I read about a